October 5th, 2025. Argentina, Entre Rios province. On a dusty dirt road far from the main routes around the small town of Rosario del Tala, a lone car sits abandoned. The area is almost completely deserted, surrounded by the kind of farmland where the only regular traffic is the occasional piece of heavy agricultural equipment. The car hasn't been hidden. Its doors are unlocked. Even more unusual, the keys are still in the ignition, but there is no sign of the person who had been driving it. Look at the scene from an investigator's perspective. A car left unlocked with the keys inside, in a place this isolated, is a strong indication that the trip ended unexpectedly. People generally don't leave a vehicle like this if they simply plan to look around or step away for a few minutes. Whoever was behind the wheel likely got out either in extreme panic and haste or because someone forced them to. The patrol officers who arrive at the scene immediately run the license plate through Argentina's national database. The car is registered to a local woman, but she wasn't the one driving it on the night of the disappearance. The person behind the wheel was her 22-year-old daughter, Diana Magali Mendieta. At that point, what began as a routine check of an abandoned vehicle turns into a full-scale investigation, because Diana has already officially been reported missing. The story had begun 2 days earlier. On the evening of October 3rd, shortly before 8 p.m., Diana took the keys, calmly told her family she had some things to take care of, and left home. There's an important detail here. The car remained out in the open for nearly 48 hours before anyone found it. For a small community like Rosario del Tala, where the population is relatively limited, that is an unusually long time. Diana's family had already become concerned and contacted authorities on October 4th after they could no longer reach her. Investigators begin gathering the basic information and quickly come across a very specific digital clue. Just minutes before starting the car and leaving home for what would be the last time anyone knew her whereabouts, Diana posted a single short sentence on her personal social media account. "I'm diving headfirst into the first thing that makes me feel alive." That is an unusual thing to post on an ordinary Friday night in a provincial town. The wording feels intense and unusually personal. It doesn't read like a casual update about weekend plans. It sounds more like Diana had made a major decision and was about to cross some kind of line. It's entirely possible that the post was actually a hidden message, meant for one specific person. In a disappearance like this, one of the first steps is usually to locate the missing person's phone. Investigators contact the mobile carrier, hoping to determine the smartphone's last known location and reconstruct Diana's route from the moment she left home to the dirt road where the car was eventually found. But they immediately run into a problem. Her phone is completely offline. This wasn't simply a dead battery. The phone had disappeared along with its owner. To experienced investigators, a sudden and complete loss of contact pointed to something more deliberate. Someone appeared to be actively interfering with the investigation. By getting rid of the device, the person responsible may have been trying to buy time and leave detectives without one of their most valuable sources of information. To break through that digital blackout, investigators made the decision to create an emergency duplicate of Diana's SIM card. They needed direct access to her call records through the mobile carrier's system. And before long, that digital copy would expose a part of Diana's life she had carefully kept out of public view. Once investigators gained access to the call records through the duplicate SIM card, the police technical unit began methodically reconstructing her contact history. The carrier records quickly challenged the straightforward picture Diana's family had always known. And this is where the investigation took one of its most unexpected turns. People can live under the same roof for years, completely convinced they know everything about one another, only for a simple list of outgoing calls to reveal an entirely different reality that had been carefully kept private. From the outside, Diana's everyday life seemed remarkably straightforward. In June 2024, she successfully earned her certification as a grain grader, a serious and highly marketable qualification in Argentina's agriculture-driven provinces. She put those skills to use, working regularly on farmland alongside her biological father. In her free time, she studied astrology, experimented with writing, and was known as an outgoing, ambitious young woman. Her personal life appeared just as stable. Diana was officially in a relationship with a man her own age named Juan Manuel Stallo. The couple made no effort to hide their relationship. They attended local events together and openly talked about building a future as a couple. To people around town, they seemed like a solid match with a clear path ahead of them. Diana's family approved of the relationship and was genuinely happy with the man she had chosen. But the phone records revealed something that didn't fit that picture at all. There were regular, repeated calls involving another number, one that immediately stood out to investigators. Police ran it through registration databases and identified the subscriber as a local contractor named Norberto Gustavo Brondino, better known around the area by his nickname, Pino. Brondino was 55 years old at the time. He had been married for years, shared a household with his wife, and had an 18-year-old son. He was a large, physically strong man who had spent years doing demanding manual work in the fields. What made the hidden relationship even riskier was just how close everything was geographically. Brondino didn't simply live in the same municipality. He rented a large agricultural storage building located very close to the Mendieta family home. And that raises an obvious question. How do you keep a relationship with a married neighbor, a man 33 years older than you, hidden for any significant amount of time in a community this small? In places like this, anything even slightly out of the ordinary can quickly become something the entire town is talking about. Investigators began quietly interviewing people in Diana's social circle, careful not to draw unnecessary attention. They soon learned that at least one of her friends knew about the second relationship. During a formal interview, that friend provided information that immediately changed the direction of the case. What had begun as a search for a missing woman was now developing into a criminal investigation with a clear, possible motive. According to her account, the older farmer was deeply unhappy with being kept in the background as Diana's secret partner. Diana's relationship with her younger, publicly recognized boyfriend triggered intense jealousy in Brondino. He became increasingly possessive, demanding constant attention and wanting to know exactly what she was doing. The situation developed into a serious conflict. On one side, Diana had an open relationship with a man her own age and the possibility of building a normal future with him. On the other, she was caught in a secret, increasingly controlling relationship with a neighbor who refused to accept being pushed into second place. The timing of the phone call supported the friend's account. Communication between Brondino and Diana continued right up until Friday evening, when she disappeared. Investigators now had reason to believe that Norberto Gustavo Brondino was the last person she had been in contact with before posting that unusually intense message and suddenly dropping off the radar. The next step was obvious. Detectives needed to pay the 55-year-old man a visit. Late that night, an investigative team arrived at Brondino's home with an emergency search warrant. Initially, this was supposed to be a firm but controlled visit, to question and investigate the last known contact of a missing woman. Within seconds, however, the situation escalated into an armed standoff with no clear idea of how it would end. When police told Brandino they needed to enter the property as part of the investigation, he flatly refused to cooperate. More concerning, he confronted the officers while holding a firearm. Consider that reaction from the perspective of someone with nothing to hide. A person confronted by police in the middle of the night might be angry. He might demand an attorney, challenge the search, complain about the intrusion, or immediately start calling a lawyer. But confronting law enforcement with a firearm is an entirely different level of response. For investigators, Brandino's extreme reaction strongly suggested that he understood exactly why officers had come to his home. The situation inside the house quickly became dangerously unstable. At first, Brandino pointed the rifle directly at the officers and threatened to fire. Then, in a sudden shift, he turned the weapon toward himself. All of this was happening in front of his wife and son, who were inside the home at the time. A long and extremely tense negotiation followed. Officers carefully tried to calm Brandino down, convince him to lower the weapon, and prevent the confrontation from ending in irreversible consequences. But talking him down doesn't work. Officers are eventually forced to move in and physically restrain him. A serious struggle follows. Brandino is a strong man accustomed to years of demanding physical labor, and getting him under control proves extremely difficult. It takes several long minutes and multiple officers to get the rifle away from him, bring him to the floor, and finally secure him in handcuffs. Once the immediate threat is under control, investigators begin a complete search of the property. Forensic teams carefully go through the living areas and discover 2 additional rifles. A third firearm is found a short time later, inside the same rented agricultural building near Diana's family home. The entire unregistered collection is immediately confiscated. Investigators also seized 2 cell phones belonging to Brandino. For the technical team, those devices could provide some of the most valuable evidence in the case. Both phones are immediately sent to a forensic laboratory, where specialists begin recovering deleted data and comparing it with Diana's phone records. But one item on the property draws particularly close attention from detectives: the vehicle parked in the yard. It is a large white Toyota Hilux pickup truck. A vehicle like this has a spacious bed and is designed to carry heavy loads across rough rural terrain. Investigators seal the truck and have it transported to a secure facility for a detailed forensic examination and chemical testing. Brandino is formally charged. At this stage of the investigation, the allegations involve resisting arrest, unlawful possession of firearms, and threatening police officers. He is placed in custody while the investigation continues. Authorities now have their primary suspect, his communication devices, and his vehicle. They have also recovered significant physical evidence. There is just one major problem. Brandino completely shuts down. He refuses to answer investigators' questions and remains silent while search teams continue working their way through the surrounding area, yard by yard. While the farmer remains in custody without providing investigators any information, a massive search operation unfolds across Rosario del Tala. More than 100 people are urgently brought in to search the area. Police cadets, firefighters, and canine teams with specially trained dogs are organized into a coordinated search force. Above the surrounding farmland, drones equipped with thermal cameras continuously scan the terrain. At the same time, teams on the ground systematically inspect every vacant shed, basement, and abandoned structure they can access. Then a local television station makes an extraordinary decision. It begins broadcasting footage from municipal surveillance cameras live on television. Residents across the town are suddenly watching the same feeds, effectively turning the entire community into one enormous set of eyes. And it is this continuous monitoring of vehicles moving through the area that finally gives investigators one of their most important leads. During a frame-by-frame review of surveillance footage from the evening of October 3rd, technicians identify a large vehicle moving through the area. Several street cameras capture the same white Toyota Hilux pickup that is now sealed and sitting in police custody. The truck is seen traveling through the dark streets during the exact period when Diana's phone permanently disappeared from the cellular network. Consider this from the standpoint of criminal logic. The person responsible gets rid of Diana's smartphone, apparently trying to eliminate electronic evidence, yet continues driving openly around the area in a large, light-colored, highly recognizable vehicle. It is a classic planning mistake. The offender focuses so heavily on eliminating one potential problem that he overlooks the fact that a vehicle this distinctive leaves a substantial visual trail behind it. Police make a strategically important decision. They immediately release information about the truck's route to local media and ask the public for help. Word quickly spreads that investigators are looking for anyone who may have seen the white pickup traveling through the area. The response comes almost immediately. A local resident contacts police and provides a specific location. He reports seeing a similar vehicle near an old abandoned farm in an isolated rural area away from the busier roads. As soon as investigators receive the tip, the operation shifts all available resources toward that location. On October 6, search teams begin a careful, step-by-step sweep of the properties surrounding the vacant buildings. The deteriorating structures themselves provide no answers. They are completely empty. But then one of the officers notices something unusual about a section of ground nearby. It simply doesn't look natural. The area has been deliberately covered, layer by layer, with broken branches, uprooted tree roots, and a thick bed of dry leaves. This isn't the kind of pile that forms naturally. Someone has clearly arranged it by hand. And there is an important detail about the way the main piece of evidence was concealed. Digging a deep hole in hard Argentine soil would require hours of exhausting physical work and leave a significant amount of dirt behind, including on the person doing the digging. Using an existing deep structure and quickly covering the opening, however, requires far less time and preparation. Officers put on gloves and begin carefully removing the makeshift camouflage. Beneath the branches, they discover the open shaft of an old, dried-up well. Measurements show that the shaft is approximately 33 feet deep. A rescue team equipped with specialized climbing gear is called to the scene. One of the specialists is lowered to the bottom on safety ropes. There, authorities locate Diana. One detail immediately stands out during the initial visual examination. Diana is still wearing the same clothes she had on when she left home. She is urgently transported from the bottom of the well to the medical examiner's facility for a full forensic examination. Specialists begin a detailed assessment and identify a serious injury to the temporal bone directly behind her left ear. Given what investigators had recently recovered during the search of Brondino's properties, including 3 rifles, their initial working theory centered on a close-range firearm injury. Investigators often face the temptation in cases like this: connect the evidence recovered during an arrest to the injuries found during the examination, and quickly build a working theory around it. But the forensic examination completely dismantles that convenient explanation. Diana's death was caused by severe head trauma, and the injury was not caused by a bullet. The attacker had used some kind of blunt, extremely heavy object, possibly an agricultural tool, striking her head with tremendous force. The medical examination also reveals another important detail. Diana has clear internal injuries consistent with extreme compression of the chest. This helps experts reconstruct the physical mechanics of the confrontation. A much larger man appears to have used his body weight to pin her down, severely restricting her ability to breathe or move. The forensic specialists are clear on another point. The fall into the deep well was not what caused Diana's death. She was already unresponsive when she was placed inside. To reconstruct what happened minute by minute, investigators have to return to the evening of October 3rd. The foundation for that timeline comes from evidence recovered inside the seized white pickup truck. When forensic technicians process the cab with luminol, they uncover what someone had apparently tried to remove through extensive cleaning. Under specialized lighting, previously washed biological traces become visible throughout the interior. Laboratory DNA testing removes any remaining doubt. The blood belongs to Diana. Investigators conclude that the confrontation between Brondino and Diana took place inside the truck, around the passenger seat. An attempt to discuss their relationship or possibly end the secret affair appears to have rapidly escalated into uncontrolled aggression. Inside the confined space of the vehicle, Diana had very little room to defend herself against a physically powerful man, accustomed to demanding manual labor every day. By synchronizing the call records obtained through Diana's duplicate SIM card with data recovered from the suspect's personal phones, the technical team is able to reconstruct the route from the meeting point to the abandoned farmland. What stands out is how quickly everything happened. The entire sequence, from the fatal confrontation to transporting Diana and concealing what had happened, took less than half an hour. Within roughly 30 minutes, the person responsible committed the crime, drove to the isolated farm, placed Diana in the well, covered the opening with a thick layer of branches, and drove away again. Location data and traffic camera footage indicate that he carried out the entire sequence alone, without anyone assisting him. After leaving the farm, Brondino returns to the car belonging to Diana's mother. He drives it to the dirt road and abandons it there. And this detail tells investigators a great deal about his state of mind. After leaving someone else's vehicle in plain sight, he doesn't even bother removing the keys from the ignition. He appears to have been so confident that nobody had seen him that he made almost no effort to make the abandoned car itself harder to find or access. That level of confidence is particularly revealing. Afterward, Brondino returns to his own property that same evening, goes back inside the home he shares with his wife and son, goes to bed, and resumes his normal routine as though nothing had happened. After the suspect is transferred to a detention facility, the people of Rosario del Tala finally begin to understand the full scale of what happened. The town's central streets quickly fill with shocked residents. Large evening marches are organized, with people carrying candles and signs. Locals demand justice for Diana and accountability for a man many of them had spent decades greeting in stores or working alongside in neighboring fields. Diana's family, meanwhile, completely distances itself from the sudden wave of public attention. On October 16th, they hold a private funeral and firmly prohibit reporters, camera crews, and other outsiders from attending, allowing the family to say goodbye away from the media. At the same time, prosecutors begin assembling an extensive body of evidence for court. The initial charges involving unlawful firearm possession and resisting police are soon overshadowed by a far more serious accusation. Norberto Gustavo Brondino is formally charged with aggravated homicide, classified as femicide. Under the local legal framework, that classification applies to a fatal crime against a woman connected to gender-based domination and aggression. Throughout official questioning and preliminary court proceedings, Brondino follows the same strategy. He refuses to speak. He offers no explanation, makes no attempt to justify his actions, and says nothing in his own defense. He exercises his right to remain silent throughout the proceedings. The case then becomes tied up in the slow process of preparing a major criminal prosecution. In December, a judge issues the first order extending Brondino's detention. His time in custody is subsequently extended again as prosecutors wait for the final results of complex, technical, forensic, and biological examinations. As of August 2026, no final verdict has been announced. Prosecutors continue building the case piece by piece, working to eliminate potential weaknesses the defense could challenge at trial. They are preparing to seek a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of early release. This case shows just how misleading the sense of security in a quiet farming community can be. People tend to assume that in places like Rosario del Tala, everyone knows everyone else, and nothing stays hidden for long. But even in a community that small, a deeply possessive relationship can develop behind the closed doors of someone everyone considers an ordinary neighbor. A grown man accustomed to being in control appears to have convinced himself that he had the right to remove the problem once he realized he was losing his influence over someone else's life. And the secrecy surrounding Diana's relationship ultimately worked in the offender's favor. By keeping what was happening between them hidden from her family, Diana unintentionally created an information gap around that part of her life. The people closest to her had no reason to understand the potential danger because they didn't know the relationship existed. Had that destructive relationship become known even a day before the Friday night meeting in the pickup, there is a strong possibility that what followed could have been prevented. Brondino would have lost one of the most important advantages he appeared to rely on, the belief that nobody knew what was happening between them.